Welcome to the Guided Expressions podcast with Martin Williams, the place to learn and be inspired to live your best life. Here is your host, Martin Williams.
And hello, everyone. My name is Martin Williams. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Guided Expressions podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe on many different platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify podcasts. You can also subscribe on SoundCloud and very soon on YouTube as well. So I want to extend you the invitation to please subscribe and join on a consistent basis, because I'm always going to be releasing new material, and you can also keep up with all the things that are going on with Guided Expressions. A lot of fun things are planned for the year 2020. So today what I wanted to talk about is a subject that may sound a little weird when I first start talking about it, but hopefully it will make sense as I continue to explain it. And it is called Leeks and Onions. Now, we all know what leeks and onions are. They are vegetables. They're actually very tasty. Things that you can put in your food and all that good stuff. But what I am talking about here is within the context of a Bible story. And it's one of the most famous Bible stories that there is, and it has to do with the children of Israel. Long story short, the children of Israel were enslaved in Egypt, and they were there for over 400 years. And the way that the story goes is that God rose up a man named Moses to deliver the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of slavery, and into a place called the Promised Land. It's a land called Canaan. And so in order to deliver them out of the Promised Land, obviously, to deliver them out of Egypt, that meant that they had to basically escape the slavery of Pharaoh, right? And so, Moses talked to Pharaoh, and at first Pharaoh didn't want to let the children of Israel go. And so God had to send a varying amount of plagues in order to force Pharaoh's hand. And eventually the children of Israel did escape bondage, but they didn't go directly into Canaan. They went into a place called the Promised Land. They went into a place called the wilderness. And in the wilderness, obviously, it wasn't slavery, but it also wasn't fun either, because before their sustenance was given to them, now they had to basically depend upon God and their faith to be fed. And it was culture shock for them, so much so that they began to complain to Moses and to the other leaders that they were better off in Egypt in slavery. And amongst the complaints were, why can't we go back to slavery so we can have our leeks and onions? Because that's what they were fed. Now, God had rained down quail. He had given them manna. He had performed all these miracles in the wilderness because he was basically teaching the children of Israel to trust in him instead of trusting in people or trusting in, a slave master. And long story short, many, many people died in the wilderness because they didn't believe God. And only those that were under the age of 21 were allowed to go into the Promised Land, across the Jordan River into the Promised Land, in addition to Moses and Caleb. So my point in all this is that leeks and onions are a metaphor for mediocrity, right? They're a metaphor for a place in our lives where we're stagnant, right? A place in our lives where, we kind of know what's coming. We know what to expect, but it's not so much like the best thing for us. a lot of times people continue to live in the status quo because that's what's comfortable, right? But it's not necessarily what's best for them, okay? God wants us to grow. He wants us to evolve. He wants us to advance. He doesn't want us to stay in the same place. When I say stay in the same place, I'm not talking about necessarily geographically, but I'm talking about staying in the same place spiritually, staying in the same place mentally, right? Are you growing as a person? Are you evolving? Are you getting better? And if you're not, then life will tend to pass you by. And a lot of times what happens is that people will start to grow. They'll start a growth program. Perhaps they'll start to try to lose weight, and they'll start to try to get their finances together. And then they get to a place where it's unfamiliar and they get scared. And that's exactly what happened with the children of Israel. They got scared, okay, because this was something that was unfamiliar to them. They weren't used to living in a wilderness, and they were used to being told what to do. They were used to being told what their day was going to be. They were fed. They were, clothed. I mean, it wasn't the best food. It wasn't the best clothes, but they knew where their next meal was coming from because the slave owner was giving it to them. Okay, because you can't starve a slave. You have to feed them so they'll work more and work the hours that are necessary. So the children of Israel were in a place that was unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity can cause us to want something in our past that isn't necessarily good for us. And to bring it to modern times, one of the best examples of that are in relationships. Perhaps you may be single for the first time in a long time, or you may be in a new relationship, and perhaps the honeymoon phase has wore off, and now you're into the main phase of the relationship where you're growing together. And it can be rocky, it can be unfamiliar, it can be turbulent at times, and you've all of a sudden start to think, well, at least with the last person, we didn't have these types of arguments. But, there's usually a reason a person is your ex, right? If you have an ex, there's usually a reason why that person became an ex. And it's oftentimes because they weren't right for you. And it's important that we don't fall into the same trap as the children of Israel, where we start wishing for leeks and onions, or we start wishing for things that, we were in survival mode back then, but now God is trying to grow us to a new place. He's trying to grow us to a new dimension, and we can't get there if we are holding on to the past. Okay? It's important that we don't hold on to our past so much that we don't embrace our future. So I just wanted to remind you of that. If you find yourself in a situation where you're wishing for the days of yore, right? You're wishing for the old days, but God wants to do new things in you. He wants to do new miracles. He wants to do new experiences for you. Embrace the present, embrace your future, and you can honor the past. You can certainly learn from it, but don't live in it. Okay? Understand that God is taking you somewhere, and He's taking you somewhere greater than you've ever gone before, and allow that work to happen. So I want to thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Martin Williams, and until next time.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Guided Expressions podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify to get all the latest content from Guided Expressions. No one builds a house without a blueprint, so why are you trying to build your dream life without one? That's how the Blueprint course was created. The Blueprint course is for people who know they were meant for more. Created by Martin Williams, the Blueprint is a streamlined way to help you create the life you've always wanted. Get instant access now by clicking the link in the description box or going to guidedexpressions.com/blueprint.